speaking here because I took my pledge to become an American citizen very seriously. I was a Republican certified poll challenger at the TCF Center from November 4th to November 5th. I was one of the victims of harassment, discrimination, and intimidation by election workers while I was fulfilling my duty as a challenger. What the witness has shared are no conspiracy theories. Several times, election workers tried to remove me from the room with the false accusations that I was impeding their process. They were the ones who blocked me from seeing the ballots, and when allowed, workers would complain. An election worker was brought up to harass me with the base of being too close. However, among themselves, they didn't social distance. I explained to him that I was only following the chairperson's direction in and out. Somehow we got to the point that English was not my first language, and he implied that then I shouldn't be there. I told him that he was discriminating and that he was treating me like garbage. He went away. Later, poll workers whispered to each other and brought police officers to remove me. It was pretty intimidating having officers approaching me when I had not done anything wrong. I understood they were trying to do their job. I noticed an officer was Hispanic, and I talked to him in Spanish. They were being lied. The officer started backing up. I witnessed many Republicans being kicked out of the room, and it was scary. That is not the America I came to a few decades ago. They were mad, kicked out, and not replaced, even though they were Republicans outside to be allowed to enter. It didn't happen. Since I was not able to see the poll books and didn't have anything to compare with, I was legally advised to challenge every ballot. The workers got pretty upset about it and advised to their people not to stop the process and dismiss any challenge. I had pages of notes of ballots. Here I had an affidavit where I can prove you that I didn't see, we couldn't do anything. There were people entered with a 11900, and I took the time to check those people. They didn't allow me to challenge it. The names of the people are here. While the Democrats are dismissing the findings from challengers, if those people were alive and registered to vote, why they were manually entered? Why weren't the ballot boxes properly sealed by the workers? Several of them were unattended, and I had a list of those tables. Me and another challenger questioned why those boxes were unsealed. The election director proceeded to seal them. As an American citizen and on behalf of the people of Michigan, I'm here to demand that you remember you took an oath to defend the country from enemy, domestic and foreign. Remember, it is your moral, ethical, and lawful duty today to seek for an investigation on the chain of custody. Demand election integrity. Demand a detailed forensic audit. You can go into history as the heroes for doing something right for this country and bringing to light what is hidden, or as cowards who didn't have the courage to protect the election integrity. You will be remembered as those who took a courageous and political incorrect stand, or as dishonest people who side with the fraud. It is your choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator McDonald has a question.
I just want to say hi to Jasmine. Jasmine is a constituent of mine. How are you?
I'm good.
I don't have a question. I just want to say I'm sorry. And I'm sorry that every one of you had to go through this experience.
Okay, you're in the war room and you're hearing that was live testimony. That was testimony today in Michigan. And that's an American citizen, naturalized American citizen, telling you what, how it is, that you ought to be ashamed of yourself if you're not prepared to step up and be a hero here. And she was giving her details of what she saw that night. The Michigan testimony was actually very powerful today. A lot of things going on. Number one, had the press conference in Northern Virginia about Pennsylvania. We're going to get to that in a minute. Number two, Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, and Bernie Kerik and company have now landed in Michigan. They are actually going to testify tomorrow. There's going to be a hearing tomorrow. They're going to talk. I think the hearing is late in the afternoon. They're going to have other meetings with Republicans during the day, talk about getting this on track, about how to focus on the steal, to stop the steal in Michigan. So Michigan is now in play. Republicans there, very engaged. We've got a photo we'll show in a few minutes. We were trying to get Brian Kennedy on here. He is in Nevada with a cyber team. They have a judge gave a court order that they get access to the system and we'll put this up here in a second. They're already arm wrestling right now. People there are saying, "Oh no, that's not exactly what it says. You got to stand like 9 feet away from it and look at the computer and not get into the computer." So they're arguing right now. Brian Kennedy was going to try to join us. Don't know if he's going to be able to because he's in the room. So and then Wisconsin dropped a massive lawsuit today, citing 221,000 ballots that were. That are illegal. Do we have the other witness in Michigan, or is that prepared? Let me know when that's prepared to tee up. Okay, not quite yet. We're going to look for some other testimony in Michigan today. Was quite fascinating. So Jack, let me turn to you. We're going to have Boris Epshteyn on here. We're trying to get Brian Kennedy, trying to get Jack Posobiec, because a lot moving. People are going all around. There was a day of, and this is what I would say, folks. This thing is game on. We're fighting everywhere. From Arizona, there's congressmen now saying, hey, if we don't get this thing worked through, we may be the guys protesting in January and saying this has got to be debated on the floor of the House. In Nevada, there's a evidentiary hearing in front of a judge on Thursday, but today we have a cyber team on the Trump campaign that has now got a court order. They can go in and start looking at the system. Lynn Wood is tweeting up a storm in Georgia. Right, he's dropping bombs that, hey, he's got evidence that Dominion Systems has taken a $400 million loan from UBS. That's Old Union Bank of Switzerland that is now owned, I think, 75% by the Chinese Communist Party, or front groups for the Chinese Communist Party. He's saying it's a complete CCP front, right? So it's Lynn Wood is all over this. In Michigan, incredible testimony today. And particularly to people talking about Wayne County and what's going on there. So don't think the folks in Michigan have dropped out. And, of course, obviously in Wisconsin, we had the commission meeting today in the revelation that there are 221,000 illegal ballots that have been cast. Jack, talk to us about Michigan.
Well, some of the testimony was very similar over and over again. You heard the woman that we just listened to talking about ballots that were being filled in 11900. What she's talking about is that they were filling in ballots that didn't have birth dates on them, and they were putting on January 1, 1900. And this was being done. We've heard several people testify to this effect, and they said, oh, that's just what we do when there's no birthday. They had one fellow who swore that he and several others followed cables proving that the voting machines were actually connected to a modem to the outside. We had one fellow saying during their forensic audit so far in just his county that they found a backdoor into the voter rolls that was very, very troubling. And all of this goes to some of the things that we've seen, not just in Michigan, but elsewhere. For example, in Detroit, there's lots of indications that empty lots had registered voters and things like that. So manipulation all across the board. There were also many times people were concerned about how they were measuring the ballots of veterans, of people who are on active duty, and whether or not these were actually being tabulated correctly. Apparently the requirement is that because they come in on a form that the machines can't read, that one of the people there is supposed to fill out your ballot as if it were on a new ballot. And in some cases they saw these ballots seemingly not be checked the same way that they came in, or just disappearing into boxes and never seemingly to be tabulated at all. So one way or the other, what we saw throughout the day was a stream of regular citizens from Michigan stepping forward and explaining sort of a horrifying process that they watched, a process that really wouldn't justify any kind of election. Even a high school prom queen election couldn't be get a crown with this sort of nonsense. And I think that what you're seeing across the board in Michigan and elsewhere is this sense amongst the people that there was something wrong with this election, and they want to understand what it is that happened. The whole world is watching, and we are watching, and now brave people are stepping forward. I've said it so many times, courage is infectious. This country stands on all of our shoulders.
Let's go. I think we have some other clips from Michigan. And like I said, when we start the day, Michigan was on the calendar. We knew it was going to be important. Rudy and his team spent another morning in Arizona with follow-up meetings and then left. They're now in Michigan. They will actually have testimony tomorrow. We'll get all the details of that in a little while. Let's go to this other clip from Michigan.
I am an unaffiliated Michigan voter who was trained by the GOP to be a poll challenger on Wednesday, November 4th, beginning in the late morning until around 8 p.m. because I was told that they needed help. They were understaffed. I witnessed the room erupt in thunderous applause and derogatory cheering as Republican poll workers were picked off one by one and ejected from the room repeatedly by police escort throughout the day. By the end of the day, they had picked off so many GOP poll workers that there were probably only a few dozen left to monitor all of the processing stations in the room, which I'm told was between 130 and 160.
I mean, this is shocking. In all of this, we've got some other close reports from Michigan. And by the way, it goes on and on and on and on. And you know, they could bring in. Somebody told me they had 250 affidavits. They could do for a whole week. The Attorney General of the United States, is he reading the same things we're reading? Is he reading the same affidavits? He said there's no fraud here. No voter fraud. I don't know if he pulled that back to be election fraud. You have voter fraud and you have election fraud. So what universe is he in, Jack Maxey?
Well, I think it's kind of shocking because I seem to think of Barr in the past as someone who is very measured in his tongue, and I find it surprising that the Attorney General of the United States would jump to a conclusion without having seen all the facts or heard all the evidence. So I will just say that perhaps he misspoke, Steve, because I don't think if he saw the same things that we're seeing, both on the data side as we crunch it and in the testimony, sworn testimony that we're watching today, that anybody could say that there's no evidence of fraud or that nothing was wrong.
It's pretty shocking. Greg, I mean, how did that strike you, given you've drilled down on Pennsylvania and you're running the war room day to day? Is Barr looking at the same flow of information that comes across your desk?
No, it's very interesting that this would come out today, especially when these hearings are coming on, when the evidence is literally being presented to the American people. And the Trump campaign did put out a statement after the Attorney General said what he did about this election, and it was a gracious statement, but they obviously pointed to the fact that there's no investigation going on from the Justice Department, so to come to a conclusion in that capacity is not substantial enough.
Well, this is it. You had Arizona yesterday. You've got Michigan today. You're going to have Michigan again tomorrow, and you had this press conference. We're going to have Boris Epshteyn is going to join us here momentarily. We're also going to have the Populist Press. Populist Press had a massive DDoS attack today. They don't know if it was a foreign source or domestic or whatever. DDoS, denial of service, is when they use the zombie computers to try to take your site down. They fought it off. We're going to have Amanda Shea from Populist Press on during the show today. We're going to do an hour. We're going to do an hour going forward. Not that Jack Maxey, Dan Floyd, myself are too sick to press on, but we think a concise hour in the evening is we think is the best. It give you an intense highlight reel of what the day is and tee up the morning show. One of the big breaking news things we have is out of Nevada. We actually have people in the room in Nevada that we were going to talk to, but unfortunately, they're in a throwdown. And here's what's happening: a judge gives a order. They get out there. They fly a team out there. They're now looking to take control of the system and go through it. And all of a sudden, they're getting a lot of pushback. Okay, we're going to have Boris Epshteyn from the campaign to walk us through the battle map as they see it when we return in a moment on War Room Pandemic.
Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
This evidence demonstrates, and it's through eyewitness testimony that's been corroborated by others through their eyewitness statements, that 130,000 to 280,000 completed ballots for the 2020 general election were shipped from Bethpage, New York to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where those ballots and the trailer in which they were shipped disappeared.
to a driver when they arrive at a United States Postal Service facility that proves you were there. The transportation supervisor refused to give me a ticket and told me to leave. I then demanded he give me a late slip since I wanted to get paid for the time I was sitting there. And waiting for them to offload me, he refused to give me that too. He was kind of rude and wouldn't explain anything to me. He just told me to go to Lancaster. I then drove to Lancaster, unhooked my trailer in its normal place, and then drove my truck to where I always park it in a nearby lot, and then I went home. The next day, it just got weirder. As I arrived at Lancaster's United States Postal Service facility with my tractor, I went to hook up to my trailer, and my trailer was gone.
Okay, welcome back to the War Room. Greg Manns from Pennsylvania is going to explain all of that to me because I'm confused. But that's, I'm sure there's a logic there. We got to hear it. It sounded very important. He sounded very sincere, although, he comes with a record, and he was the first one to step up and say that. A very compelling presentation today over by Phil Klein and the team, but I think it's going to take a little sorting to get through it. Okay, now I want to turn to Boris Epshteyn. Boris is with the campaign, one of the lawyers and strategist over there, comm specialist also. Ran surrogates for us in the 2016 campaign. Boris, let's go through the battlefield. There's been so much happening today from, Rudy and the team took longer in Arizona today to meet with additional people. They're flying into Michigan. I think they're going to have testimony tomorrow. We started the cold open in the first segment. The testimony in Michigan today was really amazing. The diversity of people and what they had to say. Wisconsin dropped, an amazing lawsuit after that audit, which caught the mainstream media by surprise. They don't want to talk about it. So walk us through. Where do we stand? It seems like a day of action, that things are really picking up speed now.
Okay, so here's where we are. Thanks for having me. Here's where we are, and it's definitely a big day. There's no two ways. So in Wisconsin, what we talked about yesterday, I said I didn't want to get ahead of the news. A lawsuit was filed using the information gleaned from that recount, which the mainstream media, of course, wants to deride. But the recount was key to getting information on the overwhelming over 200,000 ballots which were wrongfully processed in Wisconsin for one of myriad reasons. Either the clerks fixed them outside of the process allowed for by Wisconsin law, the Wisconsin Constitution, or somebody was allowed to vote by mail or absentee even though they didn't file an application, or somebody was given an absentee ballot or mail-in ballot, even though they said they were indefinitely confined and they weren't. So there's these three different phases, three different standards that were violated in Wisconsin. At least three. We believe there were more than that, but that are laid out in this lawsuit. So very, very important action in Wisconsin today. Arizona, as you saw yesterday, a marathon hearing where Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, and the Trump legal team made presentations, witnesses made presentations about widespread election fraud, election irregularities in the state of Arizona. Now on to Michigan. The team is heading there to do the same. And there was a hearing today in Michigan, and there's going to be another one tomorrow. In Georgia, a continued push, legal and legislative push, to ensure that there is a true and honest recount with signature matching. And you've got President Trump heading to Georgia this weekend. We continue to push on Pennsylvania, even though the session ended yesterday. Continue to push on Pennsylvania and work any angle possible, legislative and legal, to try to make sure that every legal vote is counted in the state of Pennsylvania. So that's Pennsylvania, Michigan, the Wisconsin, Arizona, and then you've got Nevada, where, as we know, there's now been a ruling by a judge that there's going to be examination of a machine in Nevada, and there's going to be another hearing on the 3rd as well. So as you look across the states, the Trump legal team, President Trump, continue to make progress, again, toward a very simple, very righteous goal of counting every single legal vote.
I got to tell you, you can tell the the opposition and the mainstream media is getting nervous, right? They're doubling and tripling down, where they will not actually engage with and look at any of these violations, any of this illegality. So it's really been pretty stunning. I want to go, in this process, you've had places that have been look relatively quiet, and all of a sudden they explode with things. That's because work's going on the entire time. Let's go to Michigan, which I think is particularly interesting. Michigan today, this hearing was really something, and it was just the diversity of the people, the witnesses that the Republicans put forward and the Trump people put forward. More importantly, with some of the detail. Can you give us any background on how this was all prepped, and particularly then? Rudy's going to actually, I think they're going to have a hearing tomorrow, and I think it's late in the afternoon. So what's actually going on in Michigan, and is there still a possibility to turn this thing around? I mean, they've been the one that's spiking the football the most.
Absolutely, there's a possibility. The Michigan legislature still has plenty of time to decide which electors are to be sent to Congress as a result of, again, the legal votes in this election. There's plenty of time. There's 2 weeks about till midnight of December 13th to determine who won the legal vote in the state of Michigan. And how this came about is Republicans in Michigan, including Lee Chatfield, who's calling for the hearing meeting tomorrow, where Rudy Giuliani and John Ellis are going to present. They're doing the right thing. They're saying, we want to get the information. We want to know what happened. And the credit has to go to the MAGA crowd, your listeners, your viewers, the people who are plugged in, the people who are reaching out to their elected officials and saying, we want to know, we deserve to know who won the legal vote. We deserve to know whether this election was done fair and square. That information has to come out, and it's incumbent upon Republican elected officials to not just walk away, to not put their head in the sand, but to get to the bottom of the issue.
In Pennsylvania, I think Mike Kelly, Congressman Kelly, and Parnell basically applied to go to the Supreme Court today. I think Alito will make that decision sometime this week. And also, I had this explosive press conference talking about the trailer that somehow is missing from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, with anywhere between 144,000 and 288,000 ballots. I thought, people yesterday when we left the show, everybody was in the mumble tank. We thought Pennsylvania was finished. What's going on in Pennsylvania? It looks like it's back in play right now.
Well, in terms of what Congressman Mike Kelly and Sean Parnell and others are doing, huge credit goes to them. That is a fascinating lawsuit that talks about the constitutionality of the mail-in balloting process in the state of Pennsylvania, and whether that is appropriate or not, and should be allowed to stand or not. And then they had a victory in a lower court, of course, the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court, which seems to be completely in the tank for the left, overturned, and now they're taking their push to the Supreme Court. So that is something that has to be viewed very seriously, and we're going to be following closely. And in terms of the information, as you said, more needs to come out in terms of that press conference today. And it takes some dissecting, but let's get to the bottom of it. Let's make sure that what is being discussed is investigated and not just swept under the rug. Because if there truly are thousands of ballots, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of ballots missing in Pennsylvania, that's obviously a major, major issue and a major violation.
People are very excited about what's happening in Nevada. Now, this ruling from this judge, or this, injunction came out and caught some people by surprise. I take it there's a cyber team that's going there, and I understand there's some dispute as they're there right now about what it actually says and what they're going to get access to. But if you read it at first blush, it seems like the Trump campaign for the first time actually gets access to one of these, to the entire voting system of every element of it. What is your interpretation of what's happening in Nevada? We have the evidentiary hearing in the case on Thursday, which will still be the first evidentiary hearing we've had in a court on any of these. But today you got the ability to actually go in starting at 4 o'clock Eastern time and actually for the first time get your hands on one of these voting systems.
My understanding is that it's a rather broad ruling that does allow for the plaintiffs to get a wide array of information, and let's hope that nobody on the left stands between a court order and what is supposed to be done. We've seen that happen in Pennsylvania, remember, where there was a court order to allow observers, but Democrat elected officials and I believe a sheriff actually contravened that court order. So my reading of it is the same as yours, that it's broad and it allows for a large-scale gathering of information, and I'm sure that the plaintiffs will be following through on that, with full strength.
Boris, could we ask you just to hang on for 1 second? There's a couple more questions we would like to ask you on the other side. We're going to take a short commercial break. We'll return with one of the campaign's senior lawyers and strategists, the former head of surrogates in the 2016 campaign, Boris Epshteyn. We're going to take a short commercial break. We'll be back with the War Room in just a second.
Everything's just beginning, but the games you want to play. Bring it on and I will fight to the end. Just watch and see. It's all started, everything's begun, and you are over. 'Cause we're taking down the CCP. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back on a very intense Tuesday, the 1st of December, the year of our Lord 2020. We start the last month of a year that will very much live in history in this country and the world. Our guest is Boris Epshteyn from the campaign, one of the senior lawyers. Jenna Ellis and Rudy Giuliani are on the road. They are now landed in Michigan. They will give testimony tomorrow and lay out the president's campaign's argument about why Michigan should be reversed or decertified. Boris is anchoring the team here. Boris, let's go to Georgia. There's so much controversy going on. New York Times now has a breaking story. Here's the headline: someone's going to get killed. That's in quotes. A Republican official in Georgia urged President Trump to condemn threats and harassments directed at election workers. I just saw Jack Kingston, one of the really nice guys. He was on, I think, Newsmax this afternoon, or One America, one of them, and they asked him about the situation down there, and all he talked about was the January 5th election. No mention whatsoever what's going on to secure this vote for President Trump. So is there anything actually going on, or is this thing dead in the water?
No, of course there's something going on, and we need to be fully concentrated. A goal that we've talked about with you time and time again, and the goal that the constituents of Georgia want to see, which is ensuring that the presidential election in Georgia is determined by who won the most legal votes. The campaign yesterday asked for the 5th time for a recount that is honest and true, that includes signature matching, and we are pushing on that with every lever that we have. That includes legal and legislative, and you got President Trump going down to Georgia on Saturday, both to push on this vital front to ensure that the legal votes are counted and to help with the Senate elections in Georgia. But we cannot and will not abandon the fight in Georgia, because we know what happened there. We know about the thousands of ballots found under every rock in the smaller pro-Trump counties. We need to know who won the Georgia election for president, and who meaning who got the most legal votes, not who won the recount, which counted the legal and illegal votes.
Okay, as we've been saying, one falls, they all fall. Wisconsin, which had been very quiet while the people in Wisconsin did their work, now the bombs dropped today. They had the commission meeting where they walked through. Then you had the lawsuit over, I think, no fewer than 221,000 illegal or ineligible ballots. What? This is a bombshell beyond bombshells. What's going on?
It's huge, and we've talked about this almost every day on your show, and I said, well, we believe it'll be 100,000 or above. Well, there's the number. It's over 220,000 ballots that are against Wisconsin Constitution, against Wisconsin law. Again, in the state of Wisconsin, voting by mail is a privilege. It's not a right. And what else happened is that Wisconsin officials set up voting places outside of locations that were actually pre-signified, right? The locations that were identified and preset. They organized extra locations, and those were advertised, of course, by the Biden team. They were in parks, they were God knows where else. And that's not what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to have specific identified polling locations, not somewhere where you can go and vote or collect ballots on every corner or in every park. And that's what was happening in Milwaukee and Dane counties. And that's part of the lawsuit, too. So that lawsuit is full of facts. It's full of details. And anybody in the media says, well, where's the proof? Well, you better go read that lawsuit and look at the comments by our lawyer there, Jim Trupis, by Rudy Giuliani, in which lay out in depth extensive amount of election irregularity in Wisconsin. And remember, these votes, the over 200,000 ineligible ballots, are in Milwaukee and Dane counties, which were 70-30, 80-20 Biden against Trump. So 70-30, 80-20 for Biden. And the difference in Wisconsin is only 20,000 votes.
No, Wisconsin's 20, Georgia's 12, Arizona's 10. Those three
Georgia's
right
16,
there could all fall.
Arizona's 11.
Okay. Oh, wow. Hey, I want to get to, before I get to the path forward, I want to talk about Barr. Is he not looking at the same stuff that we're looking at? I mean, you've had now thousands of affidavits. You've curated that down to literally dozens and dozens of witnesses, all with different verticals, different instances. You've had some of the top mathematicians, statisticians. You've had computer experts. You've now had Pennsylvania, Arizona. You've had Michigan today. You have more tomorrow. Wisconsin just came forward with these lawsuits with affidavits and the details. How is Barr parsing his terms when he talks about voter fraud? Is he leaving out election fraud, or are you guys sending him this information? How can he come forward today and actually says he sees no voter fraud?
Yeah, you'd have to ask the Attorney General. I will tell you that I thought that the statement by Mayor Giuliani, Jen Ellis today, and the Trump legal team was strong, laid out everything that we have seen, we have witnessed, and the fact that the DOJ really hasn't been there. And the fact that the DOJ has not been following up on these leads as far as we know right now. And that statement seemed to be very premature. Maybe it was a parsing of words, but here's what we know. From Georgia to Pennsylvania to Michigan to Wisconsin to Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, there's been widespread election fraud, widespread election irregularity. In Wisconsin, we just talked about hundreds of thousands of ballots in just two counties that were apparently cast illegally. In Michigan, where 71% of voter rolls in Wayne County don't balance, meaning the number of people voted and number of people who signed in to vote doesn't match up. These are huge problems. In Pennsylvania, up to 700,000 ballots or more, mail-in ballots that were processed without observers. Huge election irregularities. So, it's up to the Attorney General. Of course, he works at the pleasure of the president to state what he believes. But the Trump legal team made a very, very strong statement in return, and that's what I stand behind. Because there's no way one can look at this election in these states and say that it was done properly. And really, the truth is that the voter fraud, election irregularities have been widespread.
Politico today had a big story. In fact, it was a lead for a while about Matt Gaetz and others. They're saying, hey, this thing, even if the Electoral College meets on the 14th, there's a way that we can challenge this, particularly guys in Arizona and men and women in these congressional delegations that says there is a way in the Constitution that we can challenge this once it gets to Washington, D.C., and we're going to take every advantage of that because we think that this is not being handled right as we see it right now by state legislators. So the 14th, though, has still been kind of a date that's been hammered in the ground.
Big date, yes.
Today's that's the big date. Today's the 1st. Right, so we got 13 and a wake up, and the question gets to be, what's the path forward? You're fighting everywhere. You've got evidentiary hearings on Thursday. Parnell's going to the Supreme Court. You got Lynn Woods down there throwing bombs in Georgia. Sidney Powell still out doing her thing. You've got cybersecurity guys in Nevada. You're either you're talking to guys in the state legislatures in some states, and other states you're in court. What in your mind right now, with a couple of weeks left, is the path forward?
Here's the path forward. The path is to determine the amount of legal votes cast in these key states And there's utmost confidence that when that's done in Arizona, with its 11 electoral votes, those are not going to be electors that go for Joe Biden. Same in Georgia with 16. And then you need either one Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, and then you throw in Nevada, and you're way home, because the count's got to be from 306. So the math is pretty straightforward. But in the end, it's about the very straightforward, very honorable constitutional goal, a goal that lifts up America and defends America, which is making sure that this election is decided by legal votes. That is something we all should want. Democrats, Republicans, Independents, everybody. So the path forward is to continue to lay out evidence of election fraud, election irregularities, and then to make sure that the Republican legislators and Democrat legislators, where they have the backbone and is appropriate, do the right thing and make a decision on the electors that's based on the legal vote in their particular states.
Boris, how do people get access to you during the day? Because people should be on your Twitter feed and your Parler feed.
And don't forget Instagram, Steve, okay? I'm a handsome guy. I've got pictures and videos that are appropriate, okay? We're having a good time here, and I'm posting a lot on Instagram. Twitter, @BorisEP. Parler, @Boris. Instagram, Boris_Epshteyn. And Steve, again, another day, and I'm not seeing you on the gram, man, and it's real disappointing, okay? Get on there. Follow me, Boris_Epshteyn. Let's have a good time.
Boris, you are an aspirational lifestyle. Thank you very much for joining us today on the Word.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. God bless everybody. Bye-bye.
Guys, I'm going to come back to you in a second on this, but I want to get in very quickly. I don't want to take her away from our editor's desk, Amanda Shea of Populist Press. And if we can put Populist Press, the homepage up there. Look, Revolver, Citizens Free Press, Whatfinger, Populist Press, these are the alternatives. Drudge kind of dominated this for years. Andrew Breitbart, my old partner, really was one of the guys that started Drudge with Matt Drudge and was with him, I guess, on and off for, 14 years or so. Everybody's got a real strong affinity for Drudge, but man, the guy went to the dark side. So you've got all these great sites that are coming up, and I think one of the most powerful ones, the one I love going to, along with Revolver and all the rest of them, is Populist Press. You had a DDoS attack today. My phone was blowing up. Vicious was blowing up. People were blowing up, say, hey, there's a DDoS attack on Populist Press. So, Amanda, what happened?
So it was shortly thanks for having me on, by the way, Steve. It was shortly after we had posted a pretty breaking story about the Dominion voting system having received $400 million from Swiss Bank that's connected to the CCP prior to the election. And it was within minutes that we posted that story that a whole entire site came down, and we weren't sure what it was at first. Our tech team was saying later that it was a denial of service attack from many devices in China. And so then we were going to follow that up with some video footage, which we couldn't do, of course, because the site was incapacitated for 2 hours as our team fought to get it back up, and they did. So we beat that system. We're not here to be censored by anybody, including social media or the CCP. As you know, we don't rely on social media at all, except for Parler. But we're just an independent site that's just direct traffic driven, and that's at populist.press.
Well, and we've got it up on the screen. Populist Press. It's one of the ones that has made it a definite style in the Drudge mode. I think it's actually quite powerful. They have tremendous stuff up there, and the page is fully populated. I want to make sure everybody in our audience goes to Populist Press, like we want you to go to Revolver and Citizens Free Press, all these great emerging sites. Look, there's no conspiracies, but there's also no coincidences. The fact that you put up the story about UBS, that's Old Union Bank of Switzerland, that's now controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. It looks like in the story, they lent $400 million to Dominion voting systems sometimes before the election. You're saying as soon as you put that up as your lead story, almost instantaneously, all of a sudden you were under a denial of service attack?
Yes, it was essentially within a minute to 2 minutes. So I don't know how they have it tracking or if they have bots on our site or what they're doing, but they immediately knew about it and took down the site. And it's the first takedown we've ever had since we've been in existence. So again, like you said, it's no conspiracies, but no coincidences either. And that definitely seems to be the case here.
Amanda Shea from Populous Press. Everybody's got to go there and check it out. Thank you so much for joining us today on War Room Pandemic.
Thank you.
We would have her Twitter handle, but I don't think she's got one. She's a real cowboy. Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We return. We're going to get Greg Manns is going to deconstruct the Thomas More Society's press conference today with the trucker. Somewhere there's a trailer full of ballots somewhere. We're going to return in just a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
It's Jack Maxey bringing it back for the team here in the War Room on Capitol Hill. I'd like the guys in Denver to throw up a graphic for me so that the American people can take a look at what our data specialists in Europe have been doing on our behalf. This is a heat map that describes all the votes that were cast by absentee ballot or mail-in ballots in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, it does not mean that all those outlying dots are necessarily fraudulent. They could be absentee ballots. But people, I can assure you, it does not look good when we bury into the evidence. I just wanted to give everybody a little flavor of what is to come. These guys are magnificent patriots who have built a neural network of the entire United States with every GPS coordinate, every address matched to every single name, mail-in ballot that there is. So whatever we think about proof of fraud, it is coming like a tidal wave, people. And these guys are not the only people working on this. This is the thing about data and the tracks that it leaves behind. It leaves behind a story, and the story is not one that anybody who is responsible could justify. I was looking the other day, there's 650,000 licensed accountants out there. Not a single one of them would put their name to an audit that looked anything like what we're finding.
Hold. I know we're gonna have detail tomorrow, and you're gonna have the widget heads on here to walk us through this. But are you, for the audience, what you're saying is that the heat map analysis shows that these are where the votes in Pennsylvania?
Imagine that there's a light bulb in front of every address that voted in Pennsylvania. That's the equivalent of what you're looking at right now, and it can be zeroed in all the way down to the street level. So some of you people out there who are doing ballot harvesting where we can kind of match those lights to dates, we can actually visually see you taking down whole neighborhoods, taking down old age homes, things like this. It's going to be very fascinating going forward. And I just want everybody to put their hands together in a little thanks of prayer to some of these European deplorables, our pals who came forward, stepped forward with this stuff, and great things coming forward. And all we need is more data. So any of you state chairs out there who've been reluctant to hand over your data, get it to us. Now is the time.
People have to know, too, this is all critical for the 14th, and they're working toward it, but this is going to go on. You know, what happened here, we've got to get to the bottom to. Now, and we're getting to the bottom of it now to secure the victory of President Trump. But there's clearly going to be not just liability, but accountability on all this. This is not going to go away. People are relentless in doing this and putting in the hours because they're outraged at how this thing was stolen.
And the crazy thing that I'm finding, which is a bit embarrassing and at the same time inspiring, is to find out that these guys I'm working with, you know, that they're inspired by what they consider the American spirit. They keep saying, you Americans will never give up. And I have to say, sometimes talking to them, they're giving me a little bit of encouragement because I don't necessarily see everybody standing in the front lines with Steve and Greg and Vish and I. But what I can tell you is that they believe in America and they believe that we need to continue to fight. And they have full confidence that as they crunch this data, it is going to become obvious to everybody that there is systemic problems in our entire process.
No problem. Okay, real quickly, let's get to explain what went on with the trucker today. What did he say at this press conference, and what is his beef?
So he explained his normal route from Bethpage, New York, which is just inland on Long Island, to Harrisburg, and that's his set route. And he had picked up these ballots in Bethpage with the destination being Harrisburg. Upon arriving in Harrisburg, this is where things get strange. A gentleman that he was not accustomed to working with was there upon his arrival.
Hang on 1 second. The ballots, when he picked them up, were filled out?
That's correct. They were completed ballots in Bethpage.
Didn't he think that was odd that he was picking up completed ballots in Bethpage, New York, and transporting those across state lines to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
So he remarked on that in the sense that he thought it was cool that he was part of the electoral process and didn't really know the ins and outs of how this all works. But then once he realized...
How did he know there were completed ballots?
He said that he could see the outside envelope with the signatures and the printed names on it. So then arriving in Harrisburg, this gentleman said, this is not your final destination. You're now to go to Lancaster, which he didn't understand because that wasn't the route. They were to come to Harrisburg and then be distributed from there. So he waited a little while and then eventually obliged to that request from the gentleman that was in Harrisburg, brought the ballots to the Lancaster location where he was told to go. After being there for a bit, he unhooked his truck from the trailer with the ballots in it, which had up to 288,000.
This is they mathematically imputed, given the cubic measurements of the trailer, right?
Yep, exactly. And then he left for the evening, and when he came back, the trailer that was hooked up to his truck and where he had personally left it was no longer there.
So he lost the ballots that came from Bethpage are somewhere.
Yeah,
these completed ballots from Bethpage, but the ballots that are somewhere or were taken in Pennsylvania from Bethpage, New York. When he gets back, the trailer's gone.
Yeah, and the only way to explain this would be for the property at which these ballots were dropped off and taken from, if there's a full accounting of where they went from that location.
But the number one thing is yes, that's all fine, but can't the justice, somebody can ask a very simple question of the post office that, is there a trailer of yours that was missing that has somewhere between 144,000, 288,000 ballots that was picked up in Bethpage? Yes or no? Last time I looked, I think the post office guy somehow, just like Fauci, somehow reports up to the Oval Office. That to me is not that hard a phone call. Maybe a phone call saying, hey, is anybody missing did you guys miss a trailer? Yes, no, we didn't. Then it's like, okay, you got to drill down more. If they say, oh yeah, we were looking for that, where is that guy?
Well, the post office must have some complicity as well, because our guys found that a Republican mail-in ballot in Pennsylvania had a 72% chance, 72% more likely to be lost in the mail, never delivered, never returned, than a Democrat ballot.
We're going to explain that all tomorrow. Anything else? We got about 15
and
seconds.
Just for notable, that Lancaster location and where these ballots are going in to be distributed in central Pennsylvania is a highly Republican area.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to see you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. We're going to have a report from Nevada. Couldn't get that in today. They're still in the room fighting about their access to the total system. Okay, make sure you go to Bannon's War Room, #War Room Pandemic. See you tomorrow morning at 10.